Y'all get this pop-up? I've never had this before.
Oh, you got the pop-up? Good, it's new.
Yeah, I've never had that. That's cool though.
Okay, I'm gonna admit the participants.
They're gonna have artists talking.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to start in a few minutes. Please keep your mics and videos off during the event. Okay, I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Hamed, and I'm the programs manager at the Center for Book Arts. Just some housekeeping, please, for all of our attendees, stay muted and keep your videos off during the event so we can maintain bandwidth and not get kicked off. I also invite everyone to type in reactions, responses, questions in the chat throughout the evening. Myself and Emily will be moderating the chat, so feel free to use that. We also have closed captioning. On the bottom of your Zoom screen, you have the option to turn on closed captioning if you choose. So tonight is the final installment of a series of public programs in conjunction with our main exhibition, Americans Looking In. We will hear from co-curator Emily Ahern, who will moderate a discussion among the selected artists featured in the show. If you haven't already, you can visit the exhibition in person by reserving a time slot on our website, centerforbookarts.org/exhibitions. Programs like these are possible with the support of our members, students, and those who attend and encourage our public programs and exhibitions. We'd also like to acknowledge the support that we receive from the New York State Council on the Arts, with support of Andrew Cuomo and New York State Legislature, and by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with City Council. Finally, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Emily Ahern, who is an artist living in New York, working with language and sound. Ahern alters the semiotic system that is our language, obscuring its meaning. Okay, without further ado, I will welcome Emily to the virtual stage.
Thanks so much, Jenna, and thank you everyone who has joined us this evening. Sherry, my co-curator, is also on the call tonight, and so I just want to extend my thanks to her for our partnership with this endeavor and for supporting me throughout the process as well. I'm sure you all can hear that I have a young child, so I apologize if that's distracting, but it's bedtime and it's been a rough day, so we're just going with the flow. But anyway, I wanted to also extend our thanks to the Center for Book Arts for offering us the opportunity to organize this exhibition, as well as all of their funders who also make this exhibition program possible. And I would like to thank as well all of our exhibiting artists without whom this exhibition wouldn't be. So we thank you so much for doing that, and then as well joining on our panels and discussions such as these. So thank you to the 4 artists who I will be introducing now. Before I introduce everyone, I do want to kind of walk through what the evening will entail. So you all hopefully should have received a digital recipe book. Our main focus this evening is to discuss art and food and how they relate. And in the spirit of that, because our original intention with this was to have an in-person potluck back in pre-COVID times, we hope that this is a way to kind of bridge that gap and still share good times over food. So hopefully you received that. If you haven't, you should be able to through the Eventbrite or the event. So anyway, I hope that if you did receive it, you were able to enjoy a meal. Most of us on the call tonight did prepare one from the shared book. And actually, fun fact, Sherry and I both prepared the recipe that Ashok shared, which is coriander rice, and it was very good. So thank you for that. So tonight we'll be discussing with our artists some of the artwork within their practice, and as well as, again, as I said, as it relates to food. And I have prepared some questions in advance for each artist individually, and then as well to present them as a group. But as we go on through this evening, if a question comes to mind, please do drop it in the chat, and we will offer time to also engage with audience questions. So Without further ado, here is our panel. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So, is everyone seeing this okay? Here we go. So thank you again for joining us this evening. Again, this potluck is part of the exhibition Americans Looking In, which is on exhibit at the Center for Book Arts in the main gallery. So the first panelist I'll introduce tonight is Tammy Nguyen, who's a multimedia artist and writer whose works span painting, drawing, silkscreen, and publishing. And she intersects geopolitical realities with fiction. Her practice addresses lesser known histories through a blend of myth and visual narrative. She's the founder of Passenger Pigeon Press. Oops, excuse me about. She's the founder of Passenger Pigeon Press, an independent press that joins the work of scientists, journalists, creative writers, and artists to create politically nuanced and cross-disciplinary projects. Born in San Francisco, Nguyen received a BFA from Cooper Union in 2007. The year following, she received a Fulbright scholarship to study lacquer painting in Vietnam, where she remained and worked with a ceramics company for 3 years thereafter. Nguyen received an MFA from Yale in 2013 and was awarded the Van Leer Fellowship at Wave Hill in 2014. She is exhibited at the Rubin Museum, the Factory Contemporary Arts Center in Vietnam, and the Bronx Museum, among others. Her work is included in the collections of Yale University, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the MIT Library, the Seattle Art Museum, the Walker Arts Central Library, and the Museum of Modern Art Library. Our next speaker is Eric Pickersgill. Eric Pickersgill is an American artist and educator working in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he was born in Homestead, Florida. He received a Master of Fine Arts degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2015, and a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with a concentration in fine art photography from Columbia College, Chicago in 2011. His work is often about photography as he explores the psychological and social effects of cameras and their artifacts on individuals and societies as a whole. His works are often reactionary to the shifting social, physiological, psychological consequences of the digital revolution. Through photography, installation, and sculpture, Pickersgill interrogates the many ways the internet, screens, and social media have altered society. His works have been extensively published, exhibited, and collected internationally. Brady Robinson is a photographer based in Baltimore, Maryland. She divides her time between personal art projects and commissioned work. She's the owner and founder of Be More Culinary. Her documentary, Art Desks, was published by Daylight Books with essay by Andy Grunberg and distributed by Art Book DAP. She's represented by Addison Ripley Fine Art. Robinson is adjunct professor at Goucher College and UMBC. She leads photography workshops throughout the United States and gives seminars on publishing photo books, fundraising for art projects, and branding social media strategies for artists. She received her BFA in photography from the Maryland Institute, College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland, and her MFA in photography from Cranbrook Art Academy in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. And then our last panelist, Ashok Sinha, is a New York-based photographer whose large-scale photographs capture a sense of place tied to both natural landscapes and built environments. Sinha's photographs have been published by National Geographic and the New York Times and exhibited at the Museum of the City of New York, the International Center of Photography, and the Royal Photographic Society. Okay, so to start us off, I'm going to introduce Tammy Nguyen, who, just one moment, I introduced earlier. So thank you so much. All right, so Tammy, I was hoping to open this up with discussing the Color Curtain Project. The image on the screen kind of captures one of the moments from Color Curtain Project, which is a series of dinner parties and art book presentations that bring individuals of African and Asian American identities together. By breaking bread, learning history, and sharing stories, the project encourages constructive dialogue around political and social justice challenges that entwine African and Asian American experiences today. this project is so intriguing, and it isn't really what people typically expect or think of when they think of having an art experience. So I just wanted to ask you, what is the role of food in the Color Curtain project, and why premiere this work and collaboration over a meal?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I can't see you, but I can see the picture and Emily. Thank you so much for having me here. So, one of the things that is really important to me as an artist who works in artist books is this question about reading. I've talked about this before, but how one engages with an artist book is really interesting to me. I think it's what inspires me to continue with the form. When pages open, when spines start to split in half, or when something is tucked in an envelope, all of those things are different methods of reading which provide opportunities to learn about content or narratives that are unexpected. So my collaborators and I have wanted to do a project that challenges the notions of solidarity for quite some time. Solidarity, especially today, is sometimes used as a little bit of a romantic word. And we wanted to challenge what it means to have solidarity across communities. And so our project sort of brought together different African and Asian identities to examine the Bendung Conference, which was a conference of 29 Afro-Asian countries in 1955. And these countries got together to denounce colonialism, nuclear war, and racism. And in some ways, this conference wasn't exactly successful, mainly because later on, the countries individually had all of these sort of conflicts individually, and they weren't able to sort of continue the sort of the vision that they had agreed upon. And so the reason why we wanted food to be involved with this was that this was a very nuanced history, a nuanced history that is forgotten, not exactly kind of like a headline maker. And so food sort of brings folks together in order to sort of experience something that could be nuanced. And so, I don't know how you feel, but sometimes when I'm reading about content that isn't always related to my direct interests or me, it takes me a little bit of extra work, and I think that that little extra work is the work that is involved in empathy as well. And so I think food for us kind of created this environment to engage with content that really kind of probed at these romantic ideas that are so present in our sort of cultural politics today.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It makes a good, or a more friendly entry point, I guess. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tammy. We'll dig into some of the things you brought up a little bit later. So moving on to Eric. Eric, for you to discuss a little bit more about your practice and also how it relates to food, I was really interested in this specific series, Kenny's Farm, because you have this is a series exploring your grandfather's land where you grew up. So you were raised, and you mentioned in your bio, you were born in Homestead, Florida. You were raised on this farmland from which the crops were avocado and citrus. And so you participated in harvests, and you know the cycle of cultivation, right? Ensuring proper care for the plants, being at the mercy of weather, and then the difficult labor involved in harvesting. And so I just was wondering, can you share more about how your experience growing up has affected your view of food and nourishment, as well as your relationship with place, which it seems to me, at least as a viewer with your work, really informs your artistic exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big thing for me regarding this specific place, my grandfather's farm and homestead, is that it's this place where a lot of different cultures kind of came in together. My grandfather's this son of German immigrants, and then my grandmother coming from Havana when she was a teenager. And one of the big things that I always think about with this childhood within this landscape and spending a lot of time with my grandparents was that my grandmother had this very conflicted view of assimilation and what it means to be American, but also celebrating her Cuban heritage. And language was very tied up within that dilemma for her, because when she was a child and moved to the States, she was forced to speak English. It was something that her parents were like, you have to do this in order to be successful. And as like an adult now, like I wish she had spoken more Spanish around me as a kid, because I could have picked this up much more easily. But the one thing that she was never kind of pushed away from in her identity was the way that she cooked and prepared food. And so to have this like fresh citrus, we would go in the front yard and make fresh key lime pie from the limes that were the key limes that were red in the property, or having avocado salad with our arroz con pollo, which is the recipe that I provided for tonight. That was still this piece that she was so proud of and like wanted to make sure that I knew how to prepare it. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But tonight, my mom actually came over and cooked this meal with me, and we're both like tearing up in the kitchen thinking about my Nana and her stories, and seeing my two kids now who are 8 months and 4 years old eating this meal that kind of comes through this lineage just meant so much to us. And so I'm really glad that this exercise tonight with this cookbook was allowing that our family to have that experience. But so I guess getting back to the specific question as far as place goes and food, I think that the ground and the products that come from these places just remind me of my own history and how deep those roots are, but also how complicated things are now in America. And the work that I have on display at CBA right now, which shows the dichotomy or even just the division that's happening within our country because of the way social media has painted very different pictures for different Americans across this country. It's making things very complicated, and in one way I'm kind of glad that my grandparents don't have to deal with that now, that they don't see where this has gone, because I don't think either of them were hoping that this is where we would end up. Yeah, I guess that kind of sums up. I don't want to keep rambling for other people to be able to talk, but yeah, again, thank you for everyone that's being here tonight. And I'm excited that we got to share this recipe with everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I'm just very excited about this panel. I think everyone has such different backgrounds and nuance to bring to this conversation. So thank you all for being here and for entertaining my questions. Next, Brady Robinson. So Brady, you have a photography practice spanning the fine art to the commercial spectrum. So for example, in this exhibition, I have an example of an image from the series that's in the current exhibition. The series is called Art Desks. And to me, this series is a conceptual exploration of what a space says about a person. And you capture it in this photo documentary style, which at the surface almost seems like a commercial or journalistic treatment of the subject. And so over the past few years, you have, among other things, focused on food photography, starting Be More Culinary, which focuses on food and food photography. So can you tell us about why you began exploring food as a subject matter, and how does this part of your practice fit within the larger sphere of your work?
Well, I see food photography as a form of portraiture, which was also something I was investigating with Art Desk. With Art Desk, it was this idea of someone's workspace being a portrait, but also the social experiment of navigating the art world. And shooting food, sorry, I'm turning up my volume. For me, I look at food like portraits. It has to have a good angle, and it's also a social experiment. Food is a unifier. I've done a lot of documentary work in Baltimore. I've documented the Food Project, which deals with going in and teaching kids how to farm in food deserts. I've also collaborated with a lot of chefs in Baltimore. So I started Be More Culinary as not only a food photography service, but also I started doing culinary events with restaurants and chefs to bring community and conversation together at the table.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so last but not least, for these individual questions, Ashok. So Ashok, your series in Americans Looking In is Gas and Glamour, capturing beautiful, rich, colorful images of places which are part of car culture. And these images evoke a nostalgic warmth and celebrate the golden age of car culture in Los Angeles. Can you discuss why some of these images capture food spots, and how and why do these relate to car culture and further American culture?
Sure. Thank you for having me in the show. And I have to start off by saying I'm no way a chef. I'm really honored that you both tried my recipe. It's my mom's recipe, and I'm a foodie. But as far as this body of work goes, yeah, this body of work is about more about architectural advertising and car culture. So these buildings were essentially billboards at the time, built to attract motorists driving by. This was when the Eisenhower years, the highways were expanding and people were moving out to the suburbs. So everything was focused around the person behind the wheel and how could we use the building as a method, as a form of advertising to draw them in. So not surprisingly, a lot of the sites I photographed are food places, and also many of them have survived. That's the other thing. So hence you see a number of images in the series are of food establishments, be it drive-throughs or diners or restaurants, but they're all original and they're still in operation today in Los Angeles.
Wow, yeah, what a testament to if a place is good, it lasts, right? Okay, so I will go ahead and stop sharing our screen. So panelists, feel free to, hop on. All right. Great, thank you. All right, so I think what's really great about all of your practices are these capturing these different ideas of tradition. And I guess to start us off, let's talk about tradition and the tradition of sharing a meal. Why is that powerful? I think, Tammy, you kind of started touching on this earlier. So if you want to start us off, and then everyone feel free to hop in.
Yeah, I think the meal can often be a really often, not all the time, often be an unpretentious place. And that unpretentious place where it's inherently about filling you up, nourishing you, that provides a really wealthy opportunity, I think, for conversation. As artists, having a space to have a conversation that is about tough topics, I think, is actually sometimes rare. I think that, gallery spaces or museum spaces have a certain set of politic, that are set for them, but the meal is still really a dynamic space with a lot of, I think it can be much more inclusive than a lot of other kinds of spaces without food.
I'll piggyback on that and jump in. I think the space for like when you prepare a meal and you sit down together, there's just this ultimate set of like the script is already written. You know what to do when you sit in that space. You're going to consume, and then I think some of the best human interactions happen when people's mouths are full and they just stop and they listen, you know, like when your mouth is occupied, you get to actually hear someone, and when someone's heard, they get to actually feel present and feel understood. And I still push for our family, as busy as we are, to just make sure that we are teaching our son how to be, you know, he's almost 4, but how to be patient enough to sit at a table and to just actually hear what's happening to the day. And the longer we've extended his expectation to be at the table, the deeper his thoughts are getting, the more aware he's becoming of how people feel. And also just like, I almost think he's cataloging his day more, knowing that in the evening, there's going to be this expectation that we're going to discuss what's happening. And so the meal just provides this vehicle that you just all get to jump on board and be in it together, and just beautiful things happen.
Yeah, I think Eric, what you said, you know, my family's we're a big foodie family. We prepare the next meal while we're eating the one we're finishing. So even when I'm traveling, it's an easy conversation, or I think that connection. I think I see culture in food. I see the connections of people's heritage, stories, memory, all that. You know, you may not speak the same language, but you might have the same recipe or similar or something, some component of it that, you know, that you connect with. I mean, even during my series, I connected all these places, said, you know, this dish is amazing, or let's meet the chef. And it was not about photographing the place, it was more about the history of that place. And then they said, hey, you used to make it like 50 years ago, we don't have it on the menu anymore, or something, you know. So it could lead to a conversation.
I appreciate the creativity in the kitchen. For me, that can be an art practice as well. And back to what Eric said about having his kids at the table, I feel like being at the dinner table, we can hold space for each other and be mindful. So it's a safe space just to be present.
I think too, there's a particular level of intimacy and maybe generosity, especially when that meal is extended to as an invitation to inviting others in. You know, I think about how there's a reason Thanksgiving dinner, there are a lot of, you know, jokes about Thanksgiving dinner, right? You can't always control the guest at the dinner table or who's in your family. But I think what you all have mentioned is the dinner table offers us a space to kind of meet people and allow people to be themselves. So I guess this leads to the next question. How is sharing a meal disruptive to divisions we see today?
Because it's a unifier. That would be my gut answer.
I think, like, you know, I was saying, is at the end of the day, I think we all can agree upon like flavor and taste. If you did not agree with anything, and no matter where you are, I've been in places where I was unwelcome, but as soon as I sat down and started eating and talking about food, the conversation changed, because again, everybody has their grandmother's recipe or their mom's recipe, or, you know, this is their ancestral home, or this thing came from somewhere. Those stories are, regardless of your beliefs, you may not agree a lot of things, but those things are kind of, they root you as a person. So if you have the conversation from that perspective, there's almost no chance of having these kind of divisions come up, because you're talking about something very human and core to everybody.
I mean, I guess at the base level, if you're hungry, you're gonna listen, right? Like it's such a core essential to existence to eat. I actually, I think back to the project that Emily shared of my grandfather's farm. So I actually hadn't been on that land for close to 10 years. My grandparents had sold the property and it had gone through multiple owners. And then in 2015, I went down to Florida for a trip, and I knew I was going. So before I left, a couple weeks prior, I wrote a letter just addressed to the property, and was like, "Hey, my grandfather built this place with his bare hands. Here, this is why I'm coming down." And got a phone call as soon as they received the letter. And one of the first things that Damien said, he was like, "We want to have you over for a meal." Like, that was just their immediate response. And I was a complete stranger other than those walls, but they wanted to feed me. And I drove down and had this amazing meal. And I was like sobbing at dinner because it brought back all of these amazing memories of my childhood at that space. But they were so welcome to it, and their story of immigration from Argentina to coming to that land was like pretty similar to how my grandparents ended up there. And it's still just like, while we're eating, the kids are jumping in the pool, and it still had like the audio of my own childhood like playing over this beautiful meal. And yet it was food I'd never had, but it was just like, I barely knew them, but immediately we just trusted each other because of place and because of food.
I'm trying to think about the experience of eating foods that you don't know about and then maybe not liking it, and how that becomes an interesting disruptor, or trying new foods and then not realizing that certain flavors can be so just so delightful, right? I'm thinking about I don't know, the first time I had salted caramel, right? Things that seem like they're not really supposed to go together. I don't know why I have that notion, but of course, when you do taste it, if you do like it, it almost has a combustive quality in your mouth, which is just remarkable, right? And so I think that kind of disruption is really interesting and a really amazing space for art, because it makes the leap, right? It makes the leap to this area of discomfort, this area of the unknown that a lot of mediums can't always do, right? I just wanted to throw that out there, that I think that those moments are really remarkable, like in travel, right? Going to a place, and I remember the first couple of times I went to Vietnam, seeing the sort of spectrum of fermentation, right? Fermentation can go from savory to funky really quickly, right? And the funk is something that it's a little arresting, and then you kind of ease into it, and then suddenly it just expands your being into this entirely new and exciting palette.
Yeah, I definitely understand, that whole experience. I mean, so my family, my mom's from France, and French cheese is another one where the palate is acquired, I would say, maybe even built up, but it's the same thing with fermentation. I mean, cheeses take a lot of time, and sometimes, a blue cheese is a cheese that literally has mold in it. And there's a saying, like, my mother loves Roquefort, and so she always says, oh, the smellier the cheese, the better, which you would, a lot of, especially Americans, are like, oh no, or anyone who doesn't have that palate or that I guess desire. But yeah, that I think food also can capture all of so many different senses that it ends up being a very powerful central experience. Yeah, Ashok, go ahead.
I think I was going to say also, something came to mind. I was on assignment in Mongolia once, many years ago, and having that food also meant showing a sign of respect to our host. It was fermented mare's milk, and that, the smell, I mean, it was really bad, but I had just had to drink it because I knew that was my license to get into this person's life and also show my respect that I was, he was going to welcome me for the next 10 days. And if I had turned it down, that agreement was over. I mean, he wouldn't say it, but that would be a huge disrespect. So I think when language is a barrier, I think there are other ways you can show that sense of belonging or that camaraderie, whatever it is, through food. And I think that is a great connector, especially in some places.
I think a lot also about the idea of generosity. So another side to that as well is I've been able to visit Madagascar, and it's a very impoverished nation. And so for someone to offer you food is also a sacrifice to that family. Many people in Madagascar barely eat once a day. So for someone to offer you food is, yes, also, you know, a respectful gesture, but also that an incredibly generous one. And I think that maybe coming from that place of generosity in an approach with a meal is also a step to disrupting the norm, you know. Well, and what do you all think about how, so Tammy, you made an interesting point about saying that food can reach people and connect people in a way that is different from art and possibly more accessible. What do you think, or how do you think artists can create art to bring different people together?
You know, I was thinking about that question. I actually don't really know. I started to think about actually the artist book as opposed to other kinds of art. I think the artist book is or art that is made into a portable, you know, format. I think there's something about that and food which has a lot of commonality in that it can be distributed, it could be shared, and it can be you know, democratic to a certain extent, you know. And I think by those aspects, the possibility of bringing different kinds of people together is pretty vast, you know, kind of like food. You know, I think about this in my own practice a little bit, you know, like I have passenger pigeon press, and then I also have a painting practice. And, you know, passenger pigeon press, we make democratic multiples every season of the year. And in my painting practice, you know, well, you know how it goes, you know, you have exhibitions or whatever, and the kinds of people that you can reach in those two different networks are really, really different. I think that the painting one can sometimes be a little bit homogenous, you know, like folks who are interested in a particular set of things, whereas with artist books, you know, it's all sorts of stuff, because there's the content, there's people who just like artist books, there's people who like collecting those things, you know, so it kind of does this different thing of when it navigates demographics, you know. So I don't know, I'll just throw that out there, that I think, I don't know, I think artist books and food can go hand in hand.
If I may add, my experience, so we have a artist-run nonprofit called Cartwheel Initiative, where we work with disadvantaged kids. And what we do usually is an exhibition of the kids' work, along with a potluck sometimes. And that brings in their parents, their teachers, people in the community who would normally not come to an art exhibition. And that is a great thing. I think everybody looks forward to it at the end of the semester.
I'm wondering, Brady, because you focus on social media and you talk about training even emerging artists in that social media practice and presence, how do you think that ties into this idea of getting art out or having it be more accessible to more people?
I think Instagram is a really great platform for conversation and also research. It's also very democratic because it allows everyone to have a voice. I think there's a lot of strength in representation, and well, that's a big question. I guess my best answer is the democracy of it and the power of representation. Also, I'm teaching online this semester, and some of my students can't afford a camera. So a lot of students have been shooting with their cell phones. And there's also a lot of power in just having access to that kind of technology and immediacy. We do a lot of sharing on Instagram for research projects as well. I hope that answered your question.
Okay. I just want to mention that we will be opening questions to the audience. So if you have any questions for a specific panelist or for the group, go ahead and start sharing them in the chat. In the meantime, this I think also is a big question. What do you all view as an artist's responsibility to culture in sharing their work? So is there one? Why or why not?
I'll start. I personally feel like there is one. I don't want to claim that it's a universal expectation that people share it. But that's, I think, what drives the people who say they can do it versus the people who do. Or at least it does for me. Like I don't know, I stay awake. I have to get out of bed in the middle of the night regularly because I need to write things down. Like there's just ideas, there's so many things that need to be said or expressed or just experimented with. And so as an artist, for me, I'm just restless in that sense. And I think it's tough when you, I don't know, there's so much going on when, like, going back to the idea of how like democratic Instagram is, which I don't fully agree with that, just because I think that there's a lot happening on the underbelly of it that prevents us from seeing certain things. But I think that it can be challenging to want to share when you're in like this sea of just constant production over and over and over again. And I don't know, it's weird because I feel like I've been producing a lot, but I've been keeping it in my own home. And I don't know if that's something that's like happening because of the pandemic or what that is, but for the past year, I would say, like, I haven't lost my interest or my thoughts of production, but I've lost a little bit of my like thrusting to get it out. And maybe that's just because I'm sitting on a few things until they're ready. But I don't know. It's, I guess, going back just the idea that, you know, those of us that are making it, we just have to, I guess.
I think as a photographer, I have a responsibility to document time and place. And someone whose work I've been following is Devon Allen out of Baltimore, who he covered the Freddie Gray riots, and he was shooting instantly. The work would go to Instagram. And from that, he was contacted by the photo editor of Time. And recently he got a second Time Life cover with the Black Trans Lives Matter protests. So I like the immediacy available. So I think Instagram, having Devon, like, that launched his career. And this kid's still in his 20s, and he's doing a very good job of what's coming out of Baltimore. I'm also really obsessed with the work of Frances Benjamin Johnston, who was the first female photojournalist who had a portrait studio in DC at the age of 13. And if you compare like the technology of today to someone like her, she was shooting with a large format camera or showing her carte viste at a local fair in Virginia. So I'm really interested in technology and how we distribute our work. But just as a broader theme, as artists, I think it's important to document time and place, also as an archive. So, you know, generations after us can see what it was like, both our personal experiences and political as well.
I think that different kinds of artwork kind of possess different kinds of responsibilities depending on their nature, right? Like I think, you know, when I think about Passenger Pigeon Press and what we do there, the work is so much about politically urgent topics, bringing scientists together with poets, or, you know, the current issue that I'm working with, we're doing something with Native American seeds, and then also working with somebody who's done work on fake islands in Asia. You know, like there's a certain kind of didacticism, and there's a certain kind of almost like reporting that is intrinsic to Passenger Pigeon Press. But then there's like other aspects of different kinds of artwork that is, you know, poetic and slower, seemingly less urgent, you know, seemingly though, it's urgent in a totally different way. And those kinds of artworks, I think, you know, I'm thinking about painting or poetry, they can offer a certain kind of salvation, which is not necessarily about community building, but is about that kind of fulfillment in moments of solitude, which I find, you know, for me, just really important and you know, fulfilling to be a receiver of and to be a maker of. So I'll put that there.
I just want to say that I kind of agree with a little bit of Tammy and the others about, you know, just in general, the type of work and how it gets shared and shown. For example, you come to this whole conclusion that our Instagram feeds are now sort of curated, and that's kind of taken away the sense of freedom. I kind of wish I had one place on my website or somewhere which is called oddities, and things that how odd I am sometimes, how crazy I am, how ridiculous I could be. I could just put it out there. I think as a professional commercial photographer, I've kind of lost some of that because everything is curated. Everything is the finished product. My clients, what are they going to think if I put this image out there? Is it really saying, you know, speaking to the rest of my portfolio? So I don't know. I think I'm kind of on the fence as to, I don't think we have that safe space. And again, if I was going to be doing photojournalism, that's a whole other story. But as far as my practice goes, it really depends. And I kind of struggle with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can I ask, what do you think, how important is image, or what can you maybe talk about that friction we have as creators with exactly what you're talking about, the image that you're presenting versus the self, right? There's creating art is so intertwined. So often art is almost an extension of ourselves, but it's removed from ourselves, but then it still represents us. It's very strange. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I think we're all as artists, we are interested in a lot of things, but the world we live in wants us to be in one kind of silo, right? So when I see you, you do this. And if you say too many things, then they're confused. So do I talk about my abstract work? Do I talk about my portraiture work? Do I talk about my architectural work? Yes, I'm interested in specific topics within these genres. It doesn't make me scatterbrained, just makes me an artist. So I think I'm sure everybody's been through this process. Like, how many times I've gone back and forth, or do I show this work on my site? Do I just, you know, create a separate private site, or like a hidden portfolio or something, and then some editor would say, oh my God, how come I've never seen this work before? I mean, there's once a story I did on Indian bagpipers, and I showed it to my editor at the Times, and he said, how come you've never seen this before? And it got published as a story. And for a while, I was known as a bagpiper guy at the Times, because I'm like, so be it, you know? But it took me a lot of courage to even show that work, because I was afraid how I was going to be labeled as, and that would prevent me from work I really want to do. Whereas some things were personal projects, like I do short films, those are personal projects, and I'm interested in the subject matter, human interest stories. But on a commercial level, to my clients, that would be confusing. And I think there's always a constant push and pull as to who's seeing my work, how do I want to get hired, is this going to lead me to X, Y, or is this going to make people confused? Sorry if that's a very bad answer, but
No, I agree completely. I think the art world wants to put artists in little boxes in terms of their styles and the way they work. And the commercial world does as well. So I relate to what you're saying about personal projects and what do you show? And it's,
yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of
there's been,
restrictions there.
yeah, I think we all have, and we all are constantly doing this. I mean, it's a shame because I don't show probably 80% of my work that is out there because of that fact. I mean, again, Eric was saying the constant thing about not sharing too much. I mean, like, oh, is it really ready? Am I going to be judged because it's half baked, and because people are not going to give me the opportunity to say, but wait, this is a work in progress, or this is my process, or whatever, or should I just wait? And then that waiting game happens, and then I overthink it and never gets shown.
Recently, I saw a photographer create a BTS link on her website. And when you say, I wish I could show my goofy side, you know, where does that fit in? It was really beautiful because it shows like the mistakes or the mishaps or the fun that you can have on set or behind the scenes. I'm like, oh, that's a good category. I want to be in
Yeah.
that section on my website.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's important.
You know, I was,
Oh, I'm
sorry.
One more thing I wanted to add about that is I think it's important to still have fun in what we do and find joy. I feel like we're living in such a heavy time that it's okay to give ourselves permission to just find joy right now because everything's really heavy. Just as balance. I'm sorry, Tammy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. I was just gonna add, you know, I think everyone, whether you're an artist or not, and everyone knows that the next human being is a complicated being. Everyone knows that, right? You can be in any kind of profession and know that you shouldn't be in a box, right? And I've been thinking, you know, I went to the muralist show, the Mexican mural show at the Whitney, just last week or so. And there was this really, really like finite, tight, beautiful rendering. I can't remember what the proposal was, but the label on it was Philip Gustin, you know, and it was so interesting because, you know, from school, I know Philip Gustin as being the painter who was abstract, and then the painter who kind of built this completely transformed into this remarkable painter of provocative cartoons and characters, right? And then to see this one drawing, which, you know, it was so tight, like it was so tight. It was neither the sensibility that's present in the, you know, the sort of cartoonish paintings or the abstraction. I thought that was really, really cool. And you know, and then I was thinking, just as we're all talking here, you know, Barack Obama's book is like almost 800 pages right now, you know, like what does it, you know, how long and how big do you have to be able to show all of that? Like when do you graduate from only getting 200 words to write about yourself? Or when do you graduate from only being able to sort of present yourself as, you know, Tammy, the artist that does X or whatever. And, you know, just to bring it back around, passenger pigeon press, you know, when I talk about it, I automatically change pronouns and I start saying we, you know, and that's a little disingenuous because passenger pigeon press is me. But it's that shifting in the names, right? Where I'm playing with this idea of identity, right? That, you know, there's Tammy who makes paintings, and there's passenger pigeon press, which is technically under the same umbrella, but it doesn't always roll that way because of the content of those practices or those trajectories. So
I'll just chime in and add, thinking about like what goes out and what represents you and how to, I guess, how I've made those decisions, and not to repeat myself, but yeah, I just looked today because I was on Facebook, and today was the first time I had posted on my artist page, I think since April, because I just haven't engaged. And I think, I mean, it's tricky too as an artist. Like my most well-known work is work that's very critical of screen culture and the internet. And so like, I almost feel like every time I hit post, it's kind of this, I don't know, it's like going against some, at least the ways a lot of people perceive the work. But I also think about, no, I love that you brought up that idea of like Obama's book and like how big you have to be to like get everything out there. And there's a lot of fear that I have also. I have pieces that I've made at the beginning of 2016 or the end of 2016 when Trump was elected, that like they're pieces that I'm literally afraid to make public for like my own family's safety. They're pieces that are literally rusting in my dad's backyard. Like they're sculptures that I've made that represent certain things. And I don't know when I'm gonna feel good about that. Like, and they're also like pieces that are pretty complicated in their messaging, like regarding like people that are different than I am. And so it's really tough to decide like how and when, you know, it's okay. And I know that these pieces will see the light of day at some point. But I guess, I don't know, what does that say about our world right now that like I've made art that I'm like literally afraid to put out there? I don't know, that gets to a whole different topic, I suppose, but that's just where my head went when we started talking about this.
I think actually one of my favorite exhibitions I've been to date is it was at the Met Breuer, and I want to say it was called The Unfinished Work or something along those lines. But the basic premise of the exhibition was every piece in the show was unfinished, and most exhibiting artists in the show were like big names: Monet, Manet, Da Vinci, like crazy stuff. And so it was really incredible to walk through. So I think what can be difficult about this, and something that I think a lot of you have mentioned, is the idea that what the end viewer receives is this finished packaged thing, right? And it kind of feeds into this magic of being an artist and making art. And we ourselves fall into that struggle of working through, like processing, as you were saying, Ashok, like being afraid, like, should I tell someone this is a work in progress, or that I don't have all the answers yet, or that this is still being fleshed out? How does that work? Can people understand that? Can they accept that, right? And I think this all ties up into this idea of image and what we're presenting, and how, because things are so quick and we have to anticipate the perception of others, it really makes this process really difficult.
Yeah, I think, Emily, what you said about the anticipation of the perception of others, that's like key. And that also can, like usually drives us crazy. Like, what is this X person? And you know you can't control it, but you think you can control it. So you say, I'm going to only show 5 bodies of work who I think a curator at X place is going to like, but maybe it's completely different. In my personal experience, I've gotten jobs or shows which stem from completely unrelated bodies of work, completely unrelated. I mean, showing architecture and getting a portraiture job. I mean, tell me where that thing is. My first architecture job was from a travel assignment that I photographed in Brazil. And I didn't even know when this person called me, said, I like your architecture work. And I really thought that they were calling the wrong person. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm really honored and flattered, but I don't know what you're talking about. And then I realized there was one picture I had made, and that got them to think that I was an architectural photographer. So.
So I think a couple of people have been wanting to ask questions. So audience, the Q&A is open. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. I know we've received one so far, so go ahead, the time is yours. These were all the questions that I had prepared, so I've been kind of following the discussion as it goes. So again, yeah, audience, please go ahead and ask your questions. And please continue if anyone has any more thoughts to add based on Ashok's observations. Okay, well, I have plenty and I can keep going. So as you all allow this to percolate, let's continue on. But I think we're touching on something that's important in this idea of what we present, how we present, and even Eric, what you're talking about this fear almost of when is the right time to share something, or when is the right time to share some messaging. You know, even work that I made a few years ago was already difficult then. I can't even imagine now, you know, just with how things are so heightened. And I think something I've been wondering about, and maybe a previous question I asked kind of hints at this, but I think we can all agree, and it sounds like many people in our nation agree, that the hostility and deep differences that we're seeing in our nation are a problem, right? And the fact, and maybe not that the problem is the difference itself, but the fact that there's no kind of connection, right? How can we bridge and meet one another respectfully and engage well? I think that's something we all talked about, even with meals allowing us that opportunity. But how can, I don't know, what is the role of the arts in this? And I know we were saying that it's difficult to put our finger on it, but is it too big of a question to say what's the solution?
Well, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, and I think it's been, being a parent has been one of the biggest like educators for me in reflecting on like what's the path forward, because I spend so much time just trying to like pretty much alter my like instinctual reaction to reality in order to model for my kids like what I think that humans should, or how humans should be reacting in certain situations. And I don't know. The problem right now is pretty entrenched in the notion that like there's this clear division where people, I don't even think it's about necessarily morals or opinions. It's about actual understanding of reality. Like people are literally seeing two completely different countries. And I think that the algorithms behind all of our beloved social medias are extremely to blame for this. So I don't know. I don't know necessarily how art can bridge that, other than if you're speaking of a message that like allows you to hear other people out. And I've spent a lot of this past year just getting upset, and then like I'm like, I need to get off social media and stop reading this stuff, and then I get back in and then it's the same. But really, like, I don't know, I still find myself acting like a teenager, like wanting to be very like heightened and emotional and combative and aggressive, and that as we all know, doesn't fix anything. But at the same time, there's also this like social expectation that if you're not really fired up, then you're on the wrong side. And so I don't know, that's a huge thing, but I really think that I don't know if I guess maybe this is really a time and a platform for when, like, despite the fact that we can't physically be around each other, if you can make things that bring people to the same table, bring it back to food, if you will. But if we can just show up and close our mouths a little bit for a while and let people speak and hear them, we can start to get down into the more nitty gritty as to why things are happening the way they are, or why people see the world the way that they do.
I'm not totally worked out on this or anything, but I think you know, there are art audiences and that doesn't represent everybody, right? So that's like one thing. And then also, you know, one reason why I really love this show, I've been a couple of times. I'll admit I was printing some things at Center for Book Arts, but I've been a couple of times. I really appreciate how specific everyone's artwork is, you know, and so we've been talking a lot about, you know, sort of the importance of seeing folks outside of their boxes, right? Well, a lot of that has to do with being specific, you know, and having art that expresses people and individuals at very sort of with specific interests and specific sort of specific identities, right? But and also binaries right now seem to be an issue, right? Being on different polarities, that's causing a really big divide. And another reason for that is also populism, right? But turning back on art, you know, how does art reach more people without being a little populist? You see what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, I don't know, I haven't worked this out yet. Like, I appreciate art for its nuanced capabilities, but those nuances are not always accessible, you know, so there's a little bit of a conundrum there. And then art that can be a little bit too kind of general or whatever is problematic, because then it's going to have to utilize some of the binaries that are causing the big divides that we see today. I don't know.
I would say that in the context of my book, I've actually got to meet a whole different group of people, of design lovers, car lovers, architecture lovers, LA West Coast lovers, mid-century design lovers, you know, and the discussion has been a whole different kind of passion in terms of what is considered, who is the greatest architect, or what kind of what is your kind of choice of ride, or what this brings, and what is, you know, that kind of division, which is nice because I've met a lot of people and gotten in conversations where we went deep dive. I'm a car guy at heart, so I mean, it goes back to, hey, you know, you can't consider that to be the greatest car of, you know, that year kind of thing, you know. And there are passions, and obviously, you know, in real life we probably disagree on a lot of things, but these were healthy conversations and interesting disagreements, and brings out the geek in all of us in terms of whether it be a certain subject matter or whatever we're talking about, or somebody said, oh, how could you even include this site in your book where you ignored the other side? Come on, this is not even representative of what you're talking about, you know? So people will be passionate, and that's great. I think that's what I wanted to become. I mean, even when I was doing this book, I didn't want it to be an academic book. And that was a departure from the very beginning, it was a conscious choice because I wanted to make it for the masses, so to speak. I wanted to make it for people who don't go to exhibitions or don't go to the AIA or, you know, institutions that I'm involved in, because I wanted people to use this as a way to discover their own city, which is why I QR coded all the images with driving directions so that people can go see them. And at that time, I didn't know that this could become a thing, because now people can get in their cars and go see these places. So it is a way for me, it was a way for me to bring that, you know, bring this world I live in into a more greater conversation, and people can relate to, and kind of speaking outside to people in my circle. It was a hard decision, but I kind of wanted that, and you know, I kind of enjoy that different kind of conversation other than just about art.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Marco.
So Marco, hey, so I've been wanting to ask this question out loud for a second because I'm an artist based in Chicago, but I'm living in Jackson, Wyoming right now. And the question I wanted to ask is to like, it was to the point to where like, I think Ashok, is that correct?
Yes.
Ashok? To where you need to find a certain revenue or a certain place to create work, but not show your true work, or not true, that's not the word I'm looking for, but also just to show the work that you really want to show based on not a commercial standpoint. And then I want to say like, or I wanted to ask a question as to like, why can't we just do that in general? Why can't we take revenue out of the fact of that and then just make art to make art? But I understand we live in a system to show our work on revenue base, but why can't we just show the work that we just want to show?
Yes, we can. I think in my
Or
case,
like,
you know,
like just why, like, why do you feel you're not allowed to show the work that you want to show? Same with Tammy. Tammy, you said that same thing.
Yeah, I think Marco, I think it's a great question. I think, and it's a different solution for everybody. For me, my art projects live in a separate, say, online destination completely, and
yes,
I don't show it to my commercial clients. And if they come across it, I mean, there has been instances where the two worlds have met, but for most of the time, when someone's assigning me a commercial job, they would probably want to see something that's relevant. Going back to the 20 seconds of attention span that especially commercial clients have, if they're looking to hire you for a specific project, they want to see that you can do this kind of stuff. I mean, they might appreciate all the abstract landscape work that you do, but that's not the first thing they want to see. So I think that adds to the conversation. But every time I do go into a meeting, I always show some personal work, and that's always been the case. And that just shows to the person who I am as an artist. What is my voice? What do I do outside? Because I'm sure you've come across this thing like when you sit down, right? And people say, what have you done outside of assignment work?
Exactly. What do they say to you when you go into that work, or you show them your work? What do they say to you with that?
I think it definitely, I think, positioned me as a different artist in a way. How am I telling the stories that I care about outside of what I do in a commercial, in my commercial practice? What do I really do? What projects do I do when no one assigns them to me? And what does it mean, right? I mean, I'll give you a very funny example. I was in a show where I showed landscape work, and there was an art buyer from an ad agency that came and saw the work, and I got hired to shoot a Denny's commercial. Go for it. So
so but like so in a process of that happening, how can we merge both of those worlds if we can? but if we can't, like, what's the next process after that? What do you think about that? Because ultimately, I believe that we can ultimately bring fine art to just basic like human structure of like just showing the world of true art and everything like that, and get rid of everything else. That's how I process things. And like I work with big marketing companies and everything like that, but like I just want to show true art, and then just like I want the company to work with me instead of me working with the company.
I think, first of all, I think there's an audience, right? You want to show commercial art to someone, to a commercial buyer, and art to a gallerist. So I would never show my commercial work to a gallerist, but it could go the other way around, because when you're putting up a show, you're doing a book or whatever it is.
So there's
kind of work.
degrees in art.
Yeah, I mean, it's different sides of who you are, but
yeah,
it really depends. Like doing that custom presentation for a client, right?
Yeah.
You just have to show that very specific work first, and then kind of continue showing other things if you want to, without confusing that person. That's been my experience. When I try to show too much, people get confused and say, well, I don't really know what you do. How do I use you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I resonate. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I resonate with some of that. Like, but I think just to clarify, I am able to show all of the artwork that I make and that I want to show, but I'm just saying that there's different the artwork that I have, those bodies have different kinds of outputs and audiences, you know, so that that's all. But eventually they find their places, you know. It's just a different process for each set of work. But you know, I'll tell you, I think that over time though, because the thing is, every artwork or every body of artwork has a community that's at first it's invisible, and then they become visible over time, because you start to meet people and have relationships, and then your community start to take more risk on you, you know, like you can then try something else, something pushing it a little bit further. I'll give you an example. I have these are pandemic times. I have a virtual exhibition right now of paintings at my gallery, Hasfleta. Thank you. It's they're awesome. And Karen and Jesse know that I make artist books. I think most people who know me know that I also make artist books, right? And we did an artist edition. It's nothing like Passenger Pigeon Press. I made sauce. I made a jar of sauce, and the sauce, there's 70 of them, and the label is like a book, or I'm thinking about it as a book. And even though the show is a painting show, we made this fun little thing, right? But I think that, you know, to have this little artist edition involved in the show, I think that in some ways it's a result of the relationship that's been cultivated over time, you know. So they know me and they know my work and stuff like that. And this time showed a certain kind of opportunity. This opportunity happened to be virtual, and it happens to be almost Thanksgiving, right? So there are all these different opportunities that, you know, I guess have more opportunities embedded inside them. But it's something that I think evolves with your relationships with certain individuals and institutions.
True. So do you think there will ever be an actual like equality between commercial and fine art? Or do we think that like we're always going to be like, not with like Warhol or like Basquiat or anything like that? Like, do you think we can ever merge that again? Or do we think it's just so diverse right now?
I think it depends
on. Do you think it'll
on.
happen again? I don't know. Like, yeah.
I think it depends on the project. I've done work which is very much my personal art practice for a very, very commercial client. And I would never have imagined that. And I think it came down to also, I think there's a question in the chat from Chris about how to exhibit the work you're producing. I think it came from that. And that was a kind of I would say, a moment of courage to show it in some media, usually social media or somewhere, like a comedian trying out new jokes, saying, let's see how people think about this. And somebody saw it and said, I love this. Can we do it in our context? And that was a kind of I would say, a stroke of luck, or things just worked out. But I wish I was more.
I think it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. If it was a concerted effort, I'd love to do more of that. But like many projects haven't been done.
Well, do you think we'll go back to that, or do we think we're forever just between like as being a fine artist, and then like I'm a commercial artist as well. Like I work with Adidas, like Lululemon, like Nike, and like, do we think we can disperse that instead of like creating a revenue brand? Because a lot of artists, or like a lot of corporations, came into like Chicago, you'd say, and they're like, oh, we want to like a small bits, create small little things, but like can we just make it a big thing to where, like, do you think we can just make it happen on a global scale with corporations? Or do you think like it's just a different world between fine art and corporation art? Or like I don't know.
I mean, there are corporations supporting artists. I mean, I bought a piece recently from Absolute Art. They have amazing artists, and I bought a piece from them, and they represent artists. And so there are corporations out there that are actually supporting fine artists. It depends on.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it really depends on, again, who is doing what kind of work. I mean, I know people who shoot for Patagonia do some amazing work for their stores, which is unrelated to commercial work.
Yep.
Thank you so much for all of that. Tammy, thanks for dropping your exhibition in the chat for anyone who wanted to take a look at that. Ashok, you briefly mentioned it. There is a question in the chat about, do any of you think about the final exhibition of the work as you're producing your artwork, and how does that inform your process?
Not all the time. I think it depends. You know, if I have a studio visit and it's a work in progress and I've been invited to a show, sometimes there might be parameters around the space or the budget. So not all the time. I just try to make first and then see it on the wall. I'm sorry, Eric, what were you about to say?
It was pretty similar to that. I definitely think that there's only been one or two like project ideas I've ever had where the outset where people engaged with it was at the forefront. And those are ideas that I'm still like tinkering with, but I can like specifically think about my Remove series, the one that's behind me with the smartphones and the performance with the audience. Very early on with that exhibition, where I was so heavily thinking about the divide that our devices create, like in a physical sense. I was like, I want to have, like, whenever I do show this work, I want to not allow devices in. I want to have this kind of a closed off gallery space where you walk in, there's no devices. It's about coming in at a set time with a group of people and you start to immerse in conversation. And I was working on that as a student. I was a graduate student at Chapel Hill. And one of my advisors, when I floated that idea to her, she was like, well, you're just going to be in a gallery by yourself. Like there's not going to be anybody there because you're not going to be able to reproduce the work and bring people in to be able to have those conversations. And so that was one of the first times that I had to kind of push aside the exhibition piece during the creation process and during the development process to be able to just like, let me get into the meat of the work. And then we're going to figure out the best way to display this and how to disseminate it in a more democratic way. And yeah, it's such an interesting question. I think there's some works that need, like, if it's about bringing people together, it's about some sort of installation or an experience. Like it needs to be designed the way that a theatrical performance is designed. Like it needs to have the audience in mind as it's being created. So I don't, yeah, it's very fluid, I think, in the long story short.
I'm going to say,
I think I've worked in,
go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, oh, are you sure? I was just gonna say, I think that I've worked in every way and in between. You know, there's some opportunities that that allow for a lot of fluidity and change, and then sometimes there are opportunities that are really, really stringent. So, you know, I think there, you know, there was one exhibition that I had at the Factory Contemporary Art Center in Ho Chi Minh City. This is kind of a humorous story, so I'll share it. Vietnam is a censored society, and so all of the artwork that needs to that will be exhibited needs to be approved, and the approval process is really, really like specific. Like they need to see the art. But as many of you are artists probably know, you know, a lot of times you're working on that painting until the shippers come or until it goes on the wall, right? So for a particular exhibition in Ho Chi Minh City, I actually totally made up the paintings. I said that there were going to be, you know, five 40 by 60 paintings, one 6x8 painting, you know, 4 20 by 40 paintings, and then I just ate it. I just stuck to it, and then I had to sort of inject the ideas into that parameter. So that was very, very extreme. And then other kind of funny moments is like, you know, Passenger Pigeon Press, these artist books that are very experimental and open up in different ways. Well, you know, we also work on a shoestring budget, right? So everything has to fit in a 6x8 envelope. Any more than that, then it's going to be financially pretty difficult to keep up that edition. So there's things that happen all the time that happen like that.
Ashok, did you want to add to that?
No, I just was just a quick thought. When Eric was talking, I just remember having a conversation with a gallerist and the concept of bringing an audience into your work, or how would you engage them? And I kind of just, what Tammy mentioned, I kind of made it up, saying, you know what, these should be huge pieces, backlit. In fact, we should not bring people into the gallery. It should be facing outwards. It should be window installations. And the gallerist goes, that's awesome. We should totally do it. And we had a whole crowd outside on 26th Street, and people loved it. And, you know, it was one of those things that even the process of putting these up and making these light boxes became a thing. And I never imagined, I was shit scared that I was going to completely blow it. And I said, what the hell am I doing here? This is totally out of my league. But somehow, you know, everybody was like, we pulled it off, and it looked great. But it was really, I had some sleepless nights over it.
Sometimes parameters force us into a corner of creativity that's really uncomfortable, but it gives us the opportunity, I guess, right?
Right. Or the question you get at the end of the portfolio review when the review is going well and the reviewer asks you, so how do you envision these to be in a gallery? I'm like, wait, I never even thought that these are going to be shown anywhere. What are you talking about? Oh, what kind of frames are these going to be? I don't know, gold frames, massive, huge.
Okay, well, we've reached kind of the sweet spot for wrapping up. So I want to thank you all again for joining us this evening. It's been really cool to talk with you, learn more about your practice and how you approach art making and thinking through everything. So thank you so much. Just want to remind our audience that all of these fabulous artists have work in the exhibition at the Center for Book Arts in Manhattan. So if you are around New York, please go by. You can reserve a time to do that. I have the I'm just going to drop the link in the chat for everyone to take a look at the exhibition and reserve a time. But we thank you all for joining us and for your thoughtful questions. Thank you, panelists, for your incredibly thoughtful responses. I really appreciate it. I think we're all set. If anyone wants to linger a little bit and say, go off mute and introduce yourself, feel free, or say goodbye as you head out. That'd be great. Thank you.
The comment I was gonna say, it's kind of passed a little bit now as the conversation has gone on. But I believe what Ashok said, and you don't want to show too much work to a dealer because it can be confusing. Like, who's your audience? What are you showing? But at the same time, I think that there's always a lot of common denominators in your work. You can do a couple different things. You can do fine art, you can do commercial. There's often something that ties the work together. Is it really colorful? Is it formal? Is it data based? Is it location based? So even though the work can be two different subjects visually or even conceptually, it can be really similar. So once you get one series into a gallery, and we've worked, many of you know that I've worked many years in different galleries and as an independent dealer. Sometimes you just represent one body of work and then another gallery will represent another artist's body of work. And it can be an interesting segue into getting everything represented by one gallery, even if the work is quite different. And the other thing I was gonna say, I think that it came up that there's some artists that are always creating. You experiment, you utilize all of your ideas, you fail at most of them, but that's great. Sometimes you just want to check it out. And then there's artists who they work toward an exhibition. One of the galleries I was briefly with, we would give an artist a show every other year. So artists would kind of just like hang out, not do a lot. Maybe they did something else as a full-time job, which is totally fine. Some of the best artists I know do something totally different full-time. It influences their work in an interesting way. Anyway, and I think that that's also an interesting thing. Just share, if you're working with a gallery or if you have clients who acquire your work, share all of your weird ideas with everyone. And then my last comment, sorry, I'm just like on this soapbox talking, everyone. I'm a total weirdo on social media, and I actually specifically say in a couple of my professional practice courses, put your best version of yourself out there, do this, do that. But then I end up by saying, I post everything. I don't have a personal account. Everything is me. I post about my bunny, about my shoe love, just everything. I like being me, and that can often result in more genuine relationships with other people in the art world who have similar interests as you. So find what's best for you, because we're all human. And I think especially now after COVID, people will see there's a lot more to artists than being an artist and the art that they make. They're human beings. There's mothers here, there's people who are dealing with other things here regarding race. Maybe people have lost people they love in COVID. I don't know. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Emily, and all of the panelists. You guys are all so great.
Thank you all so much. I'm so happy to have been a part of this. It's been something really exciting to look forward to lately when there's not a whole lot to. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.